Hello, Widowhood. I am constantly looking for people to bring to our conversation. And each person that comes, I know that they bring something that you can utilize and use for your own story. Our conversation today is with Miss Sammie Hawkins in the UK. Yes, I met her on TikTok and she said yes to the conversation. The tools that she's going to give, you want to hear about being outside, your health, purpose, and finding joy. Those are some things that she shares about that I know that you will find helpful. Let's get into the conversation.
Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Hello, Widowhood. Our guest today is Miss Sammie Hawkins from the UK. She has stayed up late to have this conversation because she knows how important it is. So I am looking forward, and Sammie is too, to hearing your feedback, connecting with her on TikTok. She'll share with that, and we'll get right into this conversation. Welcome, Sammie.
Hi, Tina. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for saying yes. So, Sammie, how are you doing today?
Yeah, not too bad. We're in the middle of a heat wave in the UK today, so that's been quite a challenge because we don't have air conditioning here. So it's quite warm.
Make sure everybody can hear that. You don't have what in the UK?
We don't have air conditioning in the UK. We do in some places, so in our cars and in restaurants, but not in our houses. So if I'm looking a bit pink, it's because it's like 90 degrees.
90 degrees. It's 90 degrees now at 10 p.m.?
Probably not outside, but in my house, probably. Yeah.
Okay. That's good. And you know what? I wanted to make sure we brought that up because I want them to know how committed you were to this conversation. Like you did not let that stop you. You were over there looking flawless and just happy. And I want them to appreciate your commitment to this conversation. So that's why I wanted to make sure to say that. Thank you.
I wouldn't have missed it. So.
Aw. So how long have you been in the UK? Are you born and raised there? And where other places have you lived?
No, just in the UK.
Okay.
Different parts of the UK. Yeah. So
where in the UK do you live?
I live in the Midlands, I suppose it would be called. So sort of in the middle part of the country. So I'm quite close to Oxford and quite close to Cambridge. I'm very close to, if you follow the Grand Prix, Formula One Grand Prix, I'm extremely close to Silverstone racing circuit.
Nice.
And we have the Mercedes team actually in our town. So Lewis Hamilton's team is based in our town. So lots of people in our town work for Mercedes. But I've mostly lived around this kind of area for most of my life.
So living there, what places have you traveled in the world? Traveled to, I should say.
I've traveled a lot to the States. Travel a lot to the States. I have a timeshare at Disney World, so I'm a bit of a Disney freak. Well, not freak, but I just love the whole positivity and ethos of Disney, and it really is like my happy place. So I've been there lots and lots of times. Traveled to lots of other places in the States as well, but also to Thailand, lots of places in Europe. Where gosh, I can't even remember. So many places, Tina, I can't even remember.
No, that's fine.
Thailand's probably the most exotic place that I've been to. I absolutely loved Thailand.
Okay.
It was a very big
So it's interesting you would mention Disney World. I actually went to Disney World with my mom and my sister a couple of weeks ago. And it's interesting, as you mentioned, the happy place. We went to another amusement park, and it literally seemed like people were not as happy and jovial as they were at Disney in other different places. So I know it's a big theme about it being the happiest place on earth, but I'm starting to believe it in comparison to other people. Now I'm going to start taking note of that. So I do know a lot of people that like to travel to Disney. It's interesting to be in the UK and you have a timeshare to go to Disney World. That's serious commitment right there to the happiest place.
It is, yeah. So my son has been probably, I mean, he's 23 now, but he's probably been 18 times.
Wow.
And that's the joy of having being part of the Disney Vacation Club, that we can go whenever we're not whenever we want.
Oh,
But, it makes it much more affordable to go. So
okay.
uh,
Without prices. So now you've intrigued me. What is part of the Disney Vacation Club?
so it's basically a Disney timeshare. So you buy into it. We bought into it at a time when the pound was very, very strong against the dollar. So we got a bit of a bargain. And
Okay.
then you get to go to Disney every year for 50 years if you want to. So
Wow.
we love it. And yeah, that was one of the best things I got out of my divorce, actually, which will probably come up later. But to my first marriage, I got to keep the Disney timeshare, so that was a great thing.
Okay. So before getting married, what was your life look like? And we'll get into the first marriage, into your late husband.
So um, I had a very happy childhood. I went to a convent school, which I absolutely loved, even though I'm not Catholic. Um, I absolutely loved it there. And then I went on to a boarding school for the last 2 years. So that's 16 to 18, did what we call A levels. I'm not quite sure what the equivalent is in the USA. Went on to York University, which was amazing. Did a degree in linguistics there. And left, worked in London after that, started in retail management, ended up in recruitment, and also artist. I was an artist agent for some time as well, where we were looking after celebrities and their work. So that was a really amazingly fun job in my 20s in London. You can imagine, it was just fabulous.
Yeah.
And then met my first husband, who was a very nice man called Richard. And we were married in 1996. So I was 29, I think, in 96. Yes, I was. I'm at that age where you have to work out how old you are. It's
Oh
just that
yeah.
bad now.
Yes. I mean, one thing, I
So
don't know about
married
you.
Richard.
Sometimes I
Go
tell
ahead.
time or dates by when my late husband passed. That becomes a line of demarcation. Was it before that or after that?
Oh, totally. That totally is. Such a big marker, as you say. Life's never the same afterwards. So yeah, so I married him. We had one child, Theo, who's now 23, and I got divorced from him in 2010. And we're still on, good terms. I don't have a lot to do with him, but we're still on good terms. But it wasn't an unhappy marriage, but it
Mhm.
wasn't an amazingly happy marriage. And we kind of drifted apart.
Okay.
And I was kind of devastated when it ended, but I also felt, this is an opportunity for me to find somebody who is truly like my soulmate. And in 2015, I met Graham, who genuinely was the most incredible man I've ever met.
Hmm.
We had the kind of relationship where I couldn't understand why he was with me. And I'd say, but you could have anybody. You're so amazing. And he'd say, you're joking. You could have anybody. Why would you be with me? And I think that's why it worked, because I genuinely couldn't see what he saw in me, and he genuinely couldn't see what I saw in him. So we had
Hmm.
this kind of extraordinary magic between us that I never experienced before in my life. And I was pretty smug. I was like, wow, look at this. I've met this incredible man. And we had the most wonderful life, really wonderful life together, where we traveled. He loved Disney too. So we'd go there. We went to other places too. We went to Austria and Switzerland and lots of places in Europe. And then yeah, we had a great life together. Really, really great life. We got married in 2017, so quite quickly. But you know, when you've met somebody and you just kind of know, we'd both felt like we'd fixed each other. You know, I came to him a little bit broken from my previous marriage. And he was very damaged from his previous marriage. But together we kind of just fitted, you know, and just kind of completed each other, I suppose. And uh, yeah, I felt really smug, Tina. I won the lottery. And everybody knew it. You know, everybody who saw us were like, you two are just amazing together. And I suppose also because by that time, I was in my late 40s. So, you know, our kids were grown up. He has 3 boys. Our children were grown up. So we were leading this sort of single life again, really,
Yes.
without, you know,
The
the
pressures of
distractions of
raising
having a
children, the dynamics of all of that. And then I would dare say, Sammy, you were not that 26-year-old girl that met Richard. You were a more mature woman. So what you needed in that portion of your life is totally different than what you needed when you met Richard.
Oh, totally. Yeah, completely different. And yeah, it was just absolutely wonderful.
Tell
Totally
me about
wonderful.
some dates with Graham, what that looked like between you two courting before.
Well, when I first met him, I had a cupcake van. I had a big pink cupcake van, and I used to go around, used to bake cupcakes all week. And a lot of the weekends we'd spend out on the cupcake van. And he was hilarious on it. He absolutely loved being in this pink van driving along. And he was great at selling cupcakes. And, you know, people would come for one and he'd get them to buy 12. And I'd say, how did you do that? You know, and it was great. But he also worked away a lot. So he was a management consultant. So he traveled all over the world on different projects. So he'd often be away for a week or 2 weeks and come home. And it really got to the point where, um, you know, he'd come in the house, there'd be 500 cupcakes in the kitchen.
Because you
And
spent
he'd
your
be
time
like,
making those cupcakes.
oh, mad. I made about 15,000 cupcakes a year. It was a, it was
Wow.
it was a lot of cupcakes. Yeah.
Okay, so did you have a favorite flavor in all those cupcakes?
Peanut butter.
Ooh, peanut butter. I don't think
Peanut
I've had a
butter,
peanut butter cupcake. That
probably.
sounds tasty.
Chocolate and peanut butter. It was good. That was a very popular one. But yeah, so he'd come home from, you know, being away or whatever, and there'd be cupcakes everywhere. And then we'd be out on the van at the weekend. So when we got married, I decided somebody actually made me an offer for the business, which I decided to take. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to concentrate on spending time with my husband. And that's what we did, you know, and I think because he was away a lot as well, it was always so fresh when he used to come back. It was just always really lovely to see him.
Mm.
But our happy place again was always very much Disney. You know, we loved spending time. Gosh, I sound a bit weird, don't I, with all the Disney thing? I
Why
don't
would you
like.
say
It's
it's
not Mickey
weird? I
Mouse.
mean, I think so many
You know,
people spend time trying to find someplace that they will be happy. And you were fortunate enough to find someone to make you happy and also find a place that you enjoy being together. And for you to be able to bring your son with Graham and that just to be a seamless process, that's something to be grateful for. I wouldn't say it's weird. I think it's pretty cool.
yeah, I think we had so many happy times as you know, with Theo as a child,
Right.
and you know, and it's just a place where if you're prepared to, you know, look further than the surface, you can find the magic. And I absolutely love that about it.
Nice.
I remember a day when my son came to me, and we'd just watched the fireworks, and he must have been about 7, and he came to me with tears in his eyes, and he said, Mummy, he said, I don't feel sad, but I just really want to cry. And I thought, oh, yes, you've got it. You've got it. You understand what it is that I love about this play. So that made
So,
me
so
happy.
I want you to kind of, I know what the fireworks are, but I want to make sure everyone else how that happens in Disney. And can you share a little bit about that?
about the fireworks. Well, every night they have fireworks, and they are literally, I mean, I'm sure you have great fireworks in other places in the US, but in the UK there's literally nothing like it. So every firework is perfectly timed to the music. You know, they even have heart-shaped fireworks or smiley face fireworks, and Tinkerbell flies out of the top of the castle, and they have projections on the front of the castle which tell stories, and the music is always very evocative and beautiful, and things that you are familiar with if you know Disney songs, and they're just, yeah, they're very beautiful.
You nailed it, because it really is. It's not like something I've ever seen before. The way that, like I said, we were just there a few weeks ago, and we were in the Magic Kingdom, and just the way they changed the scenery with the lights and Tinkerbell coming out, and in each of the different parks, the fireworks are different. It's sort of a theme to that park. It is really something to see. You are so right, so right. So you and Graham have this wonderful dating experience. How did you get to let's get married? What did that look like?
He proposed at Disney World, of course, but I did quite a
Okay.
he proposed in Epcot. I couldn't believe he hadn't proposed in front of the castle at the fireworks the night before, because I kind of knew he was going to. I mean, I think almost as soon as we met, it was almost like we're getting married. We just kind of knew that we were going to be together forever. So
Okay.
it was just, yeah, I think, and he'd been out. He'd been out by himself shopping a week or so before we went to Disney, and I thought, oh, I know he's going to propose, and he was being, vague about it. But
Uh-huh.
by the end of the holiday, when he hadn't proposed, it was coming up to the end, I was getting a bit anxious. I was thinking, maybe he's not going to do it. Maybe he's not going to do it. So there, and I turned around one day, he tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around, and he was on one knee in the middle of Epcot with people
Oh,
shouting around us, and apparently him and Theo had a special word. So
okay.
ready with a camera, and it was very
Oh,
sweet.
wow.
So yes, that was fun. And I'd booked him to go into a diving experience at Epcot that day. He loved scuba diving, and in Epcot they have a massive aquarium, and you can dive in there. You can pay to have a diving experience there
I did not
with the
know that.
shark.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really cool. And so that was the day that he was doing that. So directly after he proposed, he got into a tank full of sharks.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that's right about time. Yeah. Were you really nervous? Or you thinking maybe I don't want him to do this? Any second thoughts? Or you're like, no, he's in there now.
I was a bit like, not today, but they're very
Right.
well fed. They're very well fed, the sharks at Disney World, so they weren't interested. They're only little ones anyway. So no,
Was
it
he
was
in a
really,
cage or literally just out with the sharks?
no, they're just small ones. They're not.
Okay.
I don't know if they're basket sharks, or there's probably I don't know. They don't associate humans with food, apparently. So he was quite
Okay.
safe. There are lots of fish things in there as
And he
well.
wasn't bleeding
But
outwardly, so there wasn't a draw. So,
no, he seemed to be fine.
so
So
what
that
did
was
it
a
look
fun.
like from the proposal to the wedding?
Oh, I got into full wedding mode. So, I mean, I loved it, because having an opportunity to get married again, when I got married the first time, it was very much, me organizing it with my mother. And I had very similar taste to my mother, but I wanted it to be, as I was her only daughter. So I kind of wanted it to be her special day. So when I got the chance to do my own thing, Tina, I did my own thing. I did.
Oh,
And it was very beautiful. It was very elegant in a lovely hotel that's about half an hour away from here, which apparently Queen Elizabeth I has stayed there, and Henry VIII had visited there many times. So it was a really beautiful space. And yeah, just we had a winter wedding. We got married on the 30th of November. We had a winter wedding, which was wonderful. It actually snowed on our wedding day a tiny little bit. And it was quite small. There was only about 60 people there. So it was just wonderful to have that opportunity to do it again, but do it the way that I really wanted to do it,
right.
wearing what I wanted to wear, and just without this, and also you change a lot, in the time. How long ago was it, after 20 years or so since I
Oh, for
first got
sure.
married? It was, things have changed, haven't they?
Yes.
It was all still quite old fashioned in 1996, and everything was very different this time. So we had a great
Wow.
time, and then we went on a honeymoon to we went to, well, Disneyland actually. We went the other side.
Okay.
We went to Hawaii, but we stopped off in LA on the way
Okay.
through. So spent 3 nights at Disneyland
Right.
using my timeshare again, and then went on to Hawaii for a week, and then stopped off at San Francisco on the way home. So it was a
Okay. Nice.
really amazing honeymoon. It's really wonderful.
How'd you
Yeah.
like Hawaii?
So I loved Hawaii, but the time difference is so great. I think it's either 10 or 12 hours by the time you get to Hawaii. I couldn't stay awake past 8 o'clock. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I feel like that coming
So
from the
we kept
East
missing
Coast. Yes.
everything.
It's a lot.
It took, yeah,
You
probably
need
took me
time
a
to
good 10
adjust.
days. Totally. We could have done with 2 weeks there, but I really loved it. I'm big into sunsets, and the sunsets at night, even in December, were just wonderful. And of course it was December, so everything was all Christmassy. I didn't think you could get too Christmassy until I spent 3 days at Disneyland. Just before Christmas, I thought, yep, I'm Christmased out. Definitely. I've had enough Christmas. So it's quite nice to get to Hawaii, and it was really amazing. And I loved San Francisco as well. We did, lots of those great things like Alcatraz and
Hmm. What are some of your favorite memories of
Bridge.
Graham?
And I think his kindness, really. He was the kindest, most patient, wonderful man. And what I loved about him the most was he obviously had a great job. He was very, very good at what he did and very well respected. In fact, they created an award in his name at work, because he
Wow.
was so respected in his company, which I found really emotional. And
How
but he had
so?
this really like cheeky, that I found it emotional.
Yes.
I think I think when you lose somebody, the thing that you want is for that person to be remembered. And knowing that he will be remembered every year and somebody will be given the Graham Hawkins Award, just literally, it kind of warmed me and broke my heart at the same time. I think,
Yes.
I do feel sad that he didn't get to achieve the things that he wanted to in his work, but that he's remembered is a really wonderful thing. But I think he always had a sense of fun about him. So he always had something that was a little bit outrageous that he'd say, I've had a great idea. And I'd say, go on, like, tell me. And he loved Land Rovers. He had 4 at one time. And he said, right, so I'm thinking, okay, we can go to Morocco and we can cross Morocco in the Land Rover and we can sleep in the back of it. And I can set up this kind of like makeshift shower. I've looked at it online and I reckon I can do that. Okay. And it'll be brilliant. And I'm like, your Land Rover has no air conditioning. I'm not going to Morocco. I'm not sleeping in the back of it whilst there are 5-star hotels in the world, Graham. I'm not doing it. And he'd be like, maybe it'll be really fun. And I'd be like, it will. But there was always something, his best days when he rolled his Land Rover in a very large muddy puddle. Look, he loved that. He was ex-army. He was
Oh,
he he was always a bit of an action man, but cried at Disney movies. He was just such a lovely, strange combination. And every day, it didn't matter how long I'd known him. Every day he'd tell me something, and I'd say, "How do I not know that about you?" He'll say, "Yeah, I read tarot cards." I was like, "You what? You read tarot cards?" He said, "Yeah, I did a course, or I've done hot yoga, or I did a Pilates class today, or I think I'll just cycle from London to Brighton this weekend, or whatever." There was always a surprise, and it was always you know, done with the best humor. Now, actually, I think that was what we did for each other. I don't think he was like that in his previous marriage at all. I think, you know, I've heard his children refer to him as Mr. Grumpy, whereas you couldn't have got further from the truth. He was not at all grumpy with me. He was just this lively, fun, charismatic man who everybody loved. So
Wow.
yeah.
It is something how different people bring out different things in us. So I could see that going back to how you were not the same woman that you were before from life experiences. And I'm sure when we've had a relationship and now we have something we enjoy so much, we value that and we treasure it and we can appreciate it. Maybe some things that would have spent us on a previous relationship is like, it's not even worth talking about. It's so small in comparison to the big things that are going on. How was the blended family? Graham having children and you having children, how did you guys work through that and being together?
Well, I mean, our children are not dissimilar ages. So his youngest is just a few months older than my son. The other one, the middle one, was away at university, and the older one was, you know, quite sort of settled really,
Okay.
with his girlfriend, and they then went on to have a baby. So yeah, it was, you know, it was just fine. You know, they were all, you know, they all got on and they all did their own thing, and we just had this amazing, wonderful time, sort of quite selfish time
Nice.
together, really, I suppose. And it wasn't long after that, of course, that we went into lockdown where it was just the two of us, you know. So
And what happened in COVID for you?
um well, it was great. We absolutely loved it, which I know makes it's really awful because for so many people it was really hard, but he was home every day, and it was the only time that he's been home the whole time, and I got to spend 24 hours a day with him 7 days a week, and I loved it, and
Hmm.
he loved it. He was furloughed. You use the same expression in the US, furloughed.
Furlough,
Yeah.
laid
So
off.
he was,
Yes.
yes, he was furloughed for about 2 months, although he kind of was still working for the company at that point. And then he went on to another project and was working from home. So he worked there with, you know, our cats surrounded by him, and uh, our wallpaper became quite famous in his office, I think. And we started doing some fun things together. So he was the head of a charity committee for his company, and we used to do these big quizzes online with his company, which were a great hit. And they've continued to do them, actually. And he was like the quiz master, and I was the assistant, and it was they were brilliant fun. So, you know, we all found a different way of living, didn't we? But from a completely selfish point of view, I loved being with that man 24 hours a day. And
Hmm.
I felt so blessed that we had that year together, that, you know, to 2020 into 21. And funnily enough, on the 14th of February in 21, we both sent each other Valentine cards that said, "This has been the best year of our lives,"
Hmm.
which was amazing, because only a week after that he died.
How did he die,
So,
Sammie?
you know, he was a very fit man. So he loved walking, hiking. He particularly loved cycling. He didn't run because he said he had bad knees, but he loved cycling. So he did a lot of cycling, and he would go out for, you know, 30, 40-mile bike rides regularly. Hadn't been out at all in the winter, and this was the 20th of February in 2021. He'd been we had a turbo trainer in the garage, so he'd been out on that all the way through the winter. And on the 20th of February 21, he decided he was going to go out on his bike on like a proper bike ride, because he had an outdoor, like a proper cycling event the next week that he was going to do with my neighbor, which was, I think, about 30 miles or 40 miles, something like that. So he thought I probably should go out actually and cycle on the road, check the bike out properly. And he went out, cycled 20 miles in good time, and had some heart incident, literally instantaneously just died.
I am so sorry. I am so sorry. How were you informed what happened to Graham?
So he always used to tag me in a an app called Strava, where you can see where people are. So people, if you go out exercising, see where they are, and it tracks their journey basically. And because I always used to like to know where he was, I would like, keep an eye on it. So the last text he sent me was, this is my Strava thing. So he said he'd be between 2 and 2.5 hours, and I checked about 2 hours. I thought I'll just check where he is. So I checked and I could see where he was, and he was still cycling. And then the phone rang, and it was my son. So I had a little conversation with my son, and then I thought, I'll just check where he is now, because he should be coming back through the door. And I could see that he'd stopped, but he hadn't just stopped. I could see he was walking around in circles. He was clearly not cycling anymore. And I thought, what's he doing? I didn't think there was anything strange about it. So I thought, that's a bit odd. I thought I'd better phone him, because maybe he's got cramp and he needs me to go and collect him, or I just need to check he's okay. So I phoned, and immediately the phone was answered by a woman who said, "Hello, who is this, please?" And I thought,
Who are you?
who are you? Exactly. I said, she said, "Hello, who is this, please?" And I said, "Graham's wife." I was quite,
Right?
and she said, I'm a paramedic. I'm with your husband. I need to ask you some questions.
Mm.
And they literally just got there. I feel like I almost had a bit of a premonition about it. I wouldn't have normally have checked it at that point. It was coincidence, and it was literally sort of 5 minutes after he had the ambulance had arrived there. So and the ambulance got there very quickly, but he, there wasn't really anything. They tried their best, but there was nothing that anybody could do for him.
And you were hearing this all on the phone as this was going on?
So I realize now that what she was doing was a fact-finding mission. So she said, so my name then came up on the phone. So she had his surname. So then she also had his first name, because it didn't have any of that stuff on his phone. So she said, so Graham's name is Hawkins. So she asked his date of birth, asked if he had any health conditions that, were concerning. And it sort of was a slow realization for me. She said, we are worried about him, but that's all they really said. And eventually, after she told me a few times that they were worried about him, I said, I get the feeling you're not telling me the whole story. And she took a deep breath and said, I wasn't going to say anything. We are still well, husband, but he is currently unresponsive. Do you know what that means? And I just thought that meant he'd fainted. Even at that point, I was thinking, okay, he'll be fine. He's obviously just fallen off his bike, and And she said, "What's your address?" And they sent a police car to come and get me. He was about 4 or 5 miles from home, not far. So they sent a police car to come and get me, and I spoke to the air ambulance paramedic as I got into the police car, and he said, we may have stopped working on him by the time you get here. And I realize now that they wanted to know how long it was going to be so they could stop, because obviously they don't want the family necessarily to come into anybody who's experienced that, somebody tried to be resuscitated in that way.
It's brutal.
It's not easy to watch. So I realize now they were trying to find out how long it would be before I get there, so that they could have stopped at that point. And it was during that short police ride, which we did, with the sirens going, and that the police officer who was in the passenger seat turned around and told me that he died.
Was anyone with you? Was your son, or you were there?
No, I was by myself. My stepfather didn't live that far away, so I phoned him when I got into the police car, and he actually met me at the scene.
Mm.
Which was, it was nice to have somebody else there. But of course, we were in the middle of COVID at the time. Everybody's wearing masks. You're not seeing people's faces. It was a very strange time. And I
Yeah.
just remember just a complete stillness around that time. I don't know. I think it's quite common. I don't, people are different, but I've spoken to other people who say the same, that entire process sort of just plays in a loop around and around and around in your head.
Yes.
It's sort of a never-ending loop that doesn't ever really quite go away. It goes a bit further into the distance now, but it's just something that constantly plays in my mind. I don't know what my mind is doing, looking for maybe a different ending. I don't know. But there was a stillness, there was a stillness about it. I remember stepping out of the car, the police car, and everybody stopped.
It seemed like
And
everything
there were
is in
3
slow
ambulances
motion.
there. Yeah, everybody stopped and the place was silent and they all looked at me.
Mm.
And I thought, gosh, this is, strange. And the senior paramedic, who was the ambulance guy, came over, put his arms around me. I never saw his face. I'd love to see his face now, because that man was extraordinary at the time, and said to me, your husband's passed away. And I said, I know. And I said, he said, do you want to see him? And he explained, what they'd done, and but they tried their best, obviously. And he said, do you want to see him? And I thought, I don't know if I do. And he said, look, there's not a mark on him. He said, but he doesn't look like your husband. And I thought, I don't know if I do. I really don't know. At that point, I'd never seen anybody who'd passed away. And I don't think that necessarily was the final memory I wanted of him, in fairness. But I felt I owed it to him, obviously. And they'd put him onto the ambulance at that point. And this, he said, I'll walk with you. And he said, and any time that you don't want to go any further, he said, well, you don't have to. There's no right or wrong here, but I'll be with you every step of the way. And he gave me so much comfort. I did go to the ambulance, walked into the ambulance. I took one look at Graham's face, and it didn't look like him. And it just, I knew he wasn't there. That wasn't him any longer. So I gave him a little kiss on his leg, which was as far as I went, told him I loved him. And I still feel a bit guilty about that, really. But I couldn't actually look him in the face, because he looked so awful. I just didn't want that vision. Well, I do have it still, but I didn't want it any closer than I'd already seen, unfortunately. But
Thank
you
you
have a
for
lot of guilt
sharing
attached
that.
to that, because it was tough. And
It is
then,
very
in
tough.
fact, as we know, that's almost the easy part. That part is almost the easy part, because it's the bits after it which are the hardest. When you sort of begin to realize they're not coming home, and the repercussions of all of those things, those are the bits that are the devastating bits. But I mean, I get flashbacks about that the whole time. I was driving back just today, and I thought, oh, and you just get almost like a kick in the heart. It's 2 years and 3 months away. I got a kick in the heart and like, oh, my husband's dead. My husband's dead. How is my husband dead? And my brain knows that, but I think there is a part of me that doesn't want to accept it. And therefore, I think it's hard, isn't it? You just think, maybe you
It is,
just think they're going to come home
yes,
still.
it is. Thank you for sharing that, Sammie. I know there's a price to be paid to share that level of pain. I appreciate you sharing that with the widowhood. If we can circle back a little bit, a couple of things you said, I just wanted to just unpack a little bit. You talked about how still it was. and how just quiet and just slow everything was. I don't think many people realize that it's almost like time just stops when something like that happens. And you talked about also playing that loop over and over again. I remember when I moved from where we raised our children to where I live now, when I would drive to work, that loop would just start playing that last day, everything that happened. And I could not, it was like somebody put in the videotape and it just went and I could not stop it from playing. I don't know if that was my mind trying to give me the reality that this has happened or emotion, but it is something I hear people experience a lot.
I've not experienced it at any
Oh,
other
okay.
time. Yeah, brutal. I mean, I didn't even cry. I don't think I cried at the time. I think the show was so great that, I mean, I cried a lot. Oh,
So
yeah, go ahead.
how did you get from the love of your life, Graham passing, to starting to talk about your journey?
Yeah, but I am quite an open person. And I think I started probably just using my Facebook page initially as an outlet to, I don't know, almost like a diary of my grief in a certain, you know, in a certain way. And a lot of my friends and people that I know locally were incredibly shocked by his very sudden death and had an awful lot of support. But I think it just sort of organically grew. But I didn't really want to use my personal page for, I felt like my friends were going to start getting really bored of my grief, because you and I know that the grief doesn't go away. It stays with you. And because I'm an open person and I feel better talking about things, um, I wanted to write about him all the time, but I realized that, other people might not have the same appetite for it. So then I started perhaps to use my Instagram page a bit more. And I have various businesses that I have anyway, messy on my Instagram page, and there wasn't really much traction there. In terms of, I connected with quite a few amazing widows, but it was a page that was, partly to do with I have an online health and wellness business, e-commerce business, and then suddenly I had all these widows as well on my page, so that was quite unusual. But TikTok was a bit of a surprise for me. So I posted on the second anniversary of Graham's death, so in February this year, I posted a video that I'd made of him on the anniversary of his death. And I
Mm.
had, which is heartbreaking, really, I had of him cycling away from the house on the day that he died. And I downloaded that quickly off our camera because I wanted to see those last moments. And I'd watched it hundreds of times, Tina, hundreds. And I'd posted it on my Facebook page, and a lot of people found it quite moving. And I made a reel that went on Instagram on the first anniversary of his death, which was quite positive. It was really sad because it showed him cycling away, but then it had lots of photos of us, and it said, you just basically don't know what's going to happen in your life, so you need to, love fiercely, live life to the full. I can't even remember now what it said, to be honest, even though it's done quite well. It was quite positive. It was basically, don't take it for granted. This was my husband cycling away. He never made it home. Be grateful, love fiercely, etc. And posted that on my Instagram page, didn't do anything. On the second anniversary, I thought I was going to stick it on TikTok, which I didn't really use TikTok at all. I had about 6 followers. That's not an exaggeration. I had about 6 followers. And I got about 6 views with any video that I put on there. And I thought, and people said, oh, TikTok's great. And I thought, no, it doesn't do anything for me. Nobody watches my videos. But I just, on a whim, just decided, I lifted it off Instagram and I put it onto TikTok. And I went back on about half an hour later and it said it had 3 views. And I thought, that's ridiculous. I hate TikTok. I thought that's stupid. And back on about 5 hours later, obviously didn't have any notifications on my phone about TikTok. And I looked at it and it said 528. And I thought, wow, I've had 528 views. And then I looked again and it was 528,000 views. And I thought, oh, okay. Oh, hadn't considered this was going to happen, because I was like, whoa, hang on, I'm not actually sure I want 528,000 people to watch this video. And it snowballed and snowballed. And I think over that weekend, it had over 2 million views.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, okay, that's that. And I kind of understand. But then, of course, people start contacting you. And then that's how it grows. And then they want to know the story. They want to know more about you. And I thought, this is a little gift. I felt, particularly because it was over the anniversary of his death, I kind of felt somebody was giving me a little sign, Tina, that maybe this was something that I should pursue in some way. But then you're like, okay, what do I actually want to achieve out of this page? It's all very well having a very sad video that lots of people find upsetting, I suppose, but also inspiring. And lots of people said, I will hug my husband tighter tonight and I won't take him for granted, and all of those things. So you feel like you're actually doing some good in the world. But I thought, what do I want this page to achieve? And ultimately, I didn't want it just to be about sadness, because I've done quite a lot in my life over the last couple of years, and it's not easy to get on with your life, as you well know. You have to make a decision what you want to do and what your husband's legacy will be. And I did not want his legacy to be my extreme sadness, because he made me the happiest person alive. Do I feel like my life is slightly ruined? I do. Do I feel I'll ever get over him? I will never get over losing my husband, but I'm still here, and I feel I'm here for a reason. And if I can inspire people and help them understand that you can find another life, it's not the life necessarily that we all thought we were going to have, but if you can pivot and find a life which is acceptable for you, find some purpose, find a reason to get out of bed every day, and start living your life again, then that has to be a good thing. So that's how I try and run my page, I suppose, showing enough positivity to give people hope, because that's what we all need in these situations. You lose every bit of hope. You lose, your entire future disappears in a second, doesn't it, when you lose your spouse? In a way that I think people who haven't lost a partner they've got no concept of how all-encompassing it is to lose a spouse. It changes absolutely everything. So I felt, I just wanted to inspire people, but also have enough on there that people could still relate to. And I don't know whether I'm getting it right or not, but that's basically the idea of my page. I'm trying now to really bring in, a lot more positive elements. I don't want people to think I'm sad the whole time. My insides are sad the whole time, Tina, but my outside isn't sad the whole time. I think, do you know what a stick of rock is? Do you know what a stick of rock is?
No,
we have a sweet. We have a candy in the UK that you buy at the seaside, which is a long. It's like a long, like hard candy, and inside it has words like printed inside, and it's stripy on the outside. You get it at the seaside. It's called a stick of rock, and they have words in the side. And I feel like a stick of rock that if you were to cut me in half, it would say sad, but the outside looks happy, because I feel sad on the inside. But you have to find a way of moving forward, and you have a choice. How do I want to do this? Do I want to be miserable? Do I want that to be his legacy? I don't. I have to find a way of being positive and being grateful for the time that we did have, because I can't change the past. None of us can change the past. We can only change how we're going to move forward. And we don't move on, we just move forward, I feel.
Thank you. Wow, Sammie, I thank you. There's a couple of things I want if you could talk about a little bit more. You talked about, well, this is how I want to phrase it. If someone is a new widow or widower and they're apprehensive about talking and sharing, how would you have that conversation with them? Or what would you recommend?
I think you've got to do what's best for you. I'm an oversharer, Tina. So, for me, talking about it comes easily. And in fact, I initially started with grief counseling, but it became very obvious that I was doing that with anybody that walked past me, really, because I always want to talk about Graham. Of course, he was the most incredible man, and I don't want his, him not to be remembered and still talked about. So the grief counseling for me at that point, I didn't find very useful. But I did then go on to find a life coach, which I did find really useful. And I found that helpful. So I talked a lot of things through with her.
What's the
But
difference between a life coach and a therapy or therapist?
I think it's about looking to the future. So what I didn't want to do was go over the past and go over my feelings. I knew how I felt, and I understood that, and I could talk about it to lots of people. But what I wanted to know was how to navigate the path forwards and try and envisage a future. And I found that really useful. In fact, I still see her at least once a month now. She's part business coach, part grief coach. In fairness, she is a grief specialist. Some of her stuff's a bit woo-woo, and I love that, we do a bit of visualization, and I've had some really amazing experiences with her where it's not exactly a meditation, but something similar where, I've almost been in the room with Graham, and when I have not known where to go or what to do, she's almost managed to get me into a space where he's in the room and I'm able to ask him the question myself, which has been, that sounds really strange. And it probably sounds very odd, but actually it was extremely powerful. I don't really know how she does that, but she's been incredible. But I think in terms of talking to people, it's just finding that one person who you can trust. I do think it's important to talk about it, though. I don't think that keeping it into yourself is ever going to help you process or understand it properly. I think you do have to talk about it I have to talk about it to process it, I think. So I think just finding, it could just be that one person or a group of people that you feel able to talk, or it could be a member of your family, but talking about it, I think, is really important.
I can definitely relate to that. You also talked about the people reaching out to you after listening to your TikTok. Any conversations that stand out or questions that people ask a lot?
I think a lot of people say I couldn't do what you're doing, and I would say, yeah, you can. I think it's a choice. I think it's a choice. I think, somebody said to me, who very sadly lost her daughter, she said, your brain drip feeds you what you're able to cope with. And I think that's a really interesting thought, that you're only dealt with what you can actually cope with at that one time, and that grows over time. So, if you start doing things small, then obviously, they grow and you're able to do more in time. But the kind of questions that I get asked, yeah, just how do you, I'm a new widow, please tell me that I'm not going to feel like this forever, or how did you manage to get your life back on track, or and I would say there are a few things really that have really, really helped me. Firstly, I try and keep myself well. because let's just face it, you know, if you feel bad, everything feels bad, doesn't it? And prior to COVID, actually, I had a number of health issues, and I've really got on top of that over the last few years. And COVID really helped with being able to go out and I could concentrate on myself. So I always make sure that I eat well. I take particular supplements, one of which is a gut health supplement. That sounds really strange, but 95% of your serotonin is created in your gut, and serotonin is your happy hormone. So if I have the right gut hormone, I feel a lot stronger. I know that sounds really strange, but if I don't take it for 3 days, I cry a lot. So for me, I find that really, really helpful. So try and keep myself well. Try and get outside and walk a little bit. I think those things are really important. The other thing that I think is really important is to, I say, practice gratitude. That's quite a big subject, but be grateful for what you do have. And at the times that I'm feeling at my worst, I will try and be grateful for what I actually have. And if you're grateful, you can't be too sad at the same time. Although I have written my gratitude crying, in fairness, so maybe that doesn't work. But I think, you know, if you can be grateful for the small, and they might be small things, they could be, you know, that you've got heating in your house, that you've got a cat who, you know, is purring next to you, that you've got, you know, a new duvet cover. I don't know, something really, it can be really small, but I think if you can be grateful for what you do have, then I think you start to look at the world in a different way. I think also finding a purpose in your life, whatever that may be. That could be your children, that could be your pets, it could be a business, is so important, because ultimately that gives you hope for the future. And that's what we all need. We need hope when everything has been, I felt everything was taken away from me the day that he died. My financial security, my best friend, all my future plans, so much disappeared. And I had to find a way to try and navigate through that, find some purpose, find some hope. And one of the ways that I did that was I bought an ice cream van. So that came about through Graham as well, because during COVID we had obviously restrictions. I'm sure it was the same with you. So only 30 people were allowed to his funeral, which was devastating, really. Although in fairness, I wouldn't have minded if it had just been me there that day. You know, it was just a day that we had to kind of get through. But obviously I wanted to have a bigger event at a later time. And so I arranged something in the summer where it was an outdoor event, because obviously everybody was still nervous about COVID. And I contacted a friend of mine who had a beautiful vintage pink ice cream van that Graham, and said, would you bring it along to this event? So this would have been in May 2001. So he'd only died in the February. And she said, oh, it's in storage. I think I'm going to sell it. And at that moment, I felt a tiny little spark in my tummy, the first time in 3 months. And I thought, I want to buy that van. I just want to buy the van. And I was like, no, I won't. And there were a few other things that happened, and it just seemed like the right thing to do. I thought it would get me out of the house. It would give me a purpose. It would, everybody loves ice cream, right? So, you know, if you're going around serving ice cream to people, you can't be too sad.
It sounds like a little Disney
But also
World driving around, the
worked.
happy place.
It is, although if you're in a 1971 van, you feel like you're taking your life slightly into your hands, and it could break down or cease to progress, we'd like to say, at any time. It is joyous. People wave at you going along the road. People point, little girls point at this big, gorgeous pink van. She's very beautiful, and she's full of fairy lights and roses, and it's very beautiful. So I ended up buying this van from my friend, and it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying in the first year. I thought, what was I doing? Well, I wasn't in a fit state to do that at all. But I did, and I got it ready, and I went out, and I found, and I'm sure it's the same for anybody working. I know when I'd gone back to working on my online business as well, that it just, I don't know, it closed something off in my mind. My mind stopped racing about the grief, and it was almost like I got a break just for that time, because I was thinking about somebody else and not about myself at that point. You know, if you're serving other people, then obviously, you know, you're not so focused on yourself. So I found that a great relief, actually, not a release as such, but a relief, just to stop the going on in your head the whole time over the grief. And so that first season on the van was interesting. And it wasn't really until last year, when I started going out on it last year, that I thought, I love this. It is fabulous. I get to go to a different wedding probably every weekend. They're all different. Everybody's happy. Everybody loves ice cream. I was at a music festival yesterday. I was at a food festival on Friday. I've got a corporate event tomorrow. You know, it's just, and everybody's happy to see you, Tina, when you're serving them ice cream. Everybody. So I thoroughly recommend that if you get a chance. But that was just my outlet. There's lots of things that people can do.
Oh, for sure. Those are
But
some really good points to go outside. Something about, I don't know about you, but I feel like sometimes it's the weirdest times of the hour that I am feeling pressed and it feels like things are closing in on you. So to be able to be outside, whether it's cold, warm, that fresh air has a way of rejuvenating you and just
oh,
you
and
just
nature.
making you feel better. The health that you talked about is so critical because the stress that is on our body from losing a spouse is tremendous. There are so many different medical studies about blood pressure, anxiety, having something happen to your heart as we're worrying and our brain is trying to process that this spouse has passed. The finding purpose, oh my gosh, spot on because that gives us something to live for, a purpose for reason. Because, like you said, everything that we knew in life was shattered in the absence of that person. You mentioned about someone talking about getting your life back on track like it was. I don't know for you, but it will never be like it was. There's a way to have purpose and on you said gratitude. I keep a little journal when I start getting kind of sad, and I'll just put three things a day in there that I'm happy about. And like you said, it can be something simple, but it just refocuses your mind from what you're hyper focused on with tunnel vision to there is some good that happened. And out of that good, I can appreciate that and let that grow into another thing that you're happy about. So I those are some really good points and for us to look at and for people to consider when they're trying to get out of or try to move forward with their life, as you would say, because we don't get to have what we did before. It's impossible.
No, we're changed. We're different people. You know, after there's a before and after, as we were talking earlier. You know, after the loss of a spouse, you're a different person. And one of the things that I noticed actually very, very quickly, and again, I was fortunate in some ways that we were still in a lockdown situation, that I almost feel like I was reset at that point. And then anything that came towards me that I didn't think served me, I didn't want anything to do with it because I felt I was dealing with enough. I didn't want negativity. So I didn't want to be surrounded by negative people. You know, your friend who's a gossip, who, you know, you might have sat there before having a coffee and listening to them before. And I would have tolerated, you know, and thought, okay, she's just telling me her stories or whatever. I suddenly was like, no, that doesn't feel good to me any longer. I don't want to do it. Things that I didn't want to do. I suddenly thought, I'm not doing that now. I don't want to do it. I'm not doing it. So it made me kind of stronger in many ways
Hmm.
and made me reevaluate what I found positive in my life. And I think I've just tried to surround myself with joy. That's, I follow the joy wherever I can. And some days you don't want to. You don't want to follow it. It's quite it's quite nice being miserable. It's not nice being miserable, but we all have those days where, the grief overwhelms us and you kind of succumb to it. But I try and follow the joy. I've done a lot of sort of frivolous type things, traveled quite a few times. I think I've had 6 holidays since Graham died. And the first one was awful. It was absolutely awful. I got there, we went to Mexico with a friend. And I just didn't like being away without him. You have a way of doing things to get
Yes.
you on a holiday. Suddenly everything was different and I didn't really get it. And I cried a lot of that holiday, but I did it. I did it. And the next holiday was much easier. And then of course the next one was easier and the next one was easier. And then, you've got different memories to sort of attach to those things as well, haven't you?
Yes. I would be interested in hearing, you said you're now in the 2.5 year mark. There's often a big fuss of making it through that first year. What are your thoughts or memories of making it through the first year in absence of Graham and what that second year looked like to you in comparison?
I think that's a very interesting question. And I think also it's not what people imagine it's going to be. I think everybody knows, you've got all these milestones in the first year, which are very difficult. It was his birthday a month after he died, a couple of months after that was my birthday, and then you've got Father's Day, then you've got, all of these things, and it's your wedding anniversary, and then it's, well, the anniversary of when we got engaged, and our wedding anniversary, and you kind of anticipate all of those things. But I was either in complete shock or denial or something during that time. And I got through those and I thought it was quite a difficult year until I reached year 2. And then I felt it all much more. I thought, I've done a year, it's fine. It's fine. The next year is going to be easy. But last year, it was almost like I was keeping going. This isn't going to beat me. I'm going to do this. But last year, I did feel that things started to sort of not crash around me, but they were much harder than I anticipated it was going to be in the second year. And obviously now I'm into the third year. It's different again. I've done all these things twice now. Is it easier or harder? It's just different, I think. I don't know that it's easier or harder. It just changes. One of the things that I do find really difficult, which has been quite new over the last probably 4 or 5 months, is that I feel very much he's slipping away from me. Whereas in that first year, I felt incredibly close to him and I remembered things really well. But now when I think about him, he almost feels not almost like he was never here. It was almost like he was a dream. And I've heard other widows talk about that and say that you do go through a phase, but actually it often comes back after that and you do remember things a bit better. And I do wonder whether that is the reality setting in, that they actually have gone, and maybe your brain kind of just sends them off slightly into the distance because it's actually too painful to deal with.
Yes.
The little things that I remembered so clearly, and fortunately I wrote them down, and I think that's a really good tip actually for anybody who's newly widowed. Write a journal, write what happened the last day that you saw them, write the last thing that they said to you, write down any memories that you've got from the past, because as much as you think you'll remember them, you won't remember them.
So true.
I wrote a journal every day for 3 months. And when I read it back now, I'm like, wow, I was really coherent. I was really coherent. I don't know quite how I managed to do it, but I was. I forget where we were going with that. But, I think it is, just important. Oh, yeah, we were talking about him disappearing from me. Yeah, and I don't remember him. The little things about him, I just don't remember as well. It's all a little bit blurred now, and that's a difficult thing to come to terms with, because I think we attach ourselves to the grief because it makes us feel close to that person. So being close to the grief makes you feel like you've still got a connection to them, I think. Whereas as the grief, it dissipates to a certain extent, but you learn to come to terms with it better, I think, or cope with the grief better, and you don't feel as close, or I certainly don't feel as close, and I want to. So I think there's always this strange juxtaposition between wanting to get on with your life and kind of wanting it to stay how it was. Of course, it can't stay how it was, but you're reluctant to let it go also because I don't know, sometimes it doesn't feel like it's the right thing to do or kind to be letting it go because you want to feel that closeness with your husband again. It's a strange thing, grief. It does weird things to us, doesn't it?
Indeed. It is muddled sometimes. It's like you just can't put a pin in it. But it's interesting you say that we feel connected to our loved ones by the grief, but we were more connected to them by love than the grief itself. And it's interesting, as you say, as that grief changes and the slipping away, what does moving forward in your life look like for you, Sammie?
What does it look like? Just more joy. I think, I've had a very difficult couple of years as well, which has made my journey quite difficult, especially difficult, because as I've mentioned before, both Graham and I were married before, and 6 weeks after he died, I was contacted by his ex-wife, who issued legal proceedings against the estate to try and get money, really. And I feel very sad about that because it's kind of nothing to do with me. It's between him and his ex-wife. I don't know her. I've never met her. But it's been hanging over me for the entire 2 years. And finally on Friday, we agreed to settle out of court because it's been relentless, Tina. And I think it's really important as well, if you have been married before, to perhaps look at your divorce order before somebody dies. I mean, I don't know whether people will listen to this if they haven't lost somebody, but it's important to understand what some of those clauses in the contracts are, because I absolutely know he would have hated me to have been left in this position. But she's been relentless, and although she has no case and she's not entitled to any money, the way the legal system works in the UK is that I have to go to court to fight it. And my legal fees have been insane. We ended up in the High Court 3 weeks ago, and that one day cost me £15,000. That's about $20,000. And that's one day, and this has been going on for 2 years. So you can only imagine how devastating it's been. And I wasn't left a lot of money by him. So, I've had to borrow money to pay my legal fees from family members. So it's been very stressful. So going back to your question, how does it look? I'm hoping that now that we've agreed to settle, we're just finalizing the court order now. I hope that I can move forward without that hanging over me, because that will be a huge weight off me completely. But really just, looking for the joy. And I kind of hope that the TikTok thing will go a little bit further. It doesn't have to be TikTok, but I really love the idea of connecting with other widows and being able to inspire people that their life even after a life-changing experience that we've all been through, that your life doesn't have to end. It changes. And you can find the joy somewhere else. It's not the life that we wanted. It's not the life that we would choose. But by just making a few changes in your life and the way that you look at things, you can find a life that is acceptable. And I guess I just didn't want to be one of those people that felt my life didn't have any purpose, or yeah, I just didn't want, as I said earlier, I didn't want his legacy to be my sadness, because I owe him more than that. And he would want me to go out and live a happy life, I think. Yeah, I think he would. So that I hope that I can continue to inspire people, continue to do things that I love, like being out on my ice cream van, grow my other business, and yeah, just do some of the things that I love doing.
What are your other businesses, Sammie, and how can people contact you?
So one of the things that I did before COVID, not so much since, although I do still teach, is I am actually a private singing teacher and performer. So for, gosh, what year are we in? I think about 17 or 18 years, I've sung in a 1940s close harmony trio, like the Andrew Sisters, which has been a joyous thing. Now, we've not done that at all since Graham died. I can't bring myself to go back to that. It's at the moment. I hope one day that we will, because it was such a wonderful time. But I still teach singing from home. I've had a lot of vocal problems. My voice is quite croaky. It shouldn't be croaky. I've had a lot of vocal problems since Graham died as well. I think I cried too much, Tina. I think I've damaged my voice.
More tears than I've ever cried in my entire life.
And it's not permanent. I've got a rotated larynx, which is, if you look it up on the internet, the main cause of a rotated larynx is extreme trauma. So, but I'm having a lot of treatment for that. So I'm hoping I'll get back to my singing, because that's always been a major part of my life, and I love that. As I said, I have an online health and wellness business, which has been extraordinary for me during this time. And I would encourage people to, if they're looking for purpose, if they're looking for something to do, perhaps some, a place where they can work from home and still have some earnings, but also some great training, and we a great community. That business set me up for my grief. I do not doubt I found that business, or it almost, to allow me or give me the skills to deal with what I had to come. I certainly didn't practice gratitude before. I certainly didn't look after myself in the way that I do now. I didn't have the community around me, and I didn't have that sense of purpose. So that has been extraordinary. And it's been a great source of earnings for me at a time when my life stopped. That carried on happening for me, because my clients still bought, products from my online business. So that has always been great. And obviously, on TikTok as well, you can contact me there, and I'm very open to chatting to any widows on there. I love it when people message me, and we can have a conversation, because I just love helping people, feeling like you're making a difference to somebody else's life. That's what life's about, making a difference to other people.
So those are the ways in which the topics they can contact you. And in our notes and in the bio, we'll be able to have the link to your TikTok, your email address, and that information about your online business. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. What, if you were to talk to younger Sammie, what age range would she be, and what advice would you give her?
It's interesting, because I've done a lot of this with my coach, actually.
Oh.
And it's interesting, because when she takes me back to meet young Sammie, I'm always five. And it's broken my heart, Tina, going back and talking to her. Because how do you tell somebody what's going to happen in their life? you're going to get divorced, you're going to lose the love of your life. How do you tell a 5-year-old that? And that's hard. Sorry. But the thing I would say to her is, you're going to be okay. It's going to be really hard. It's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done, but you're going to be okay. And you are stronger. I hate people telling me I'm strong, by the way. I'm sure we all hate being told we're strong, but I am, maybe not strong is the right word. I am more resilient than I ever believed I was.
Yes, resilient.
I told that man every day I wouldn't last a minute without you. I wouldn't. Every day I'd say, be careful out on your bike, Graham, because, I wouldn't last a minute without you. I couldn't survive without you. And here I am, 2.5 years later, almost, and I am surviving without him. Yeah, it breaks my heart to go back and speak to that little girl, because we all have our dreams, and you want to end up, I want to end up with the Disney fairy tale, and I got that. In fact, for our Valentine's Day, just before Graham died, he sent me a picture which had Mickey and Minnie on it, and it said, sometimes life gives you a fairy tale, and that's you and me, it says, and he had our names on it, and I felt I had that fairy tale, and it's hard, I think, to go back and tell a little girl that her life's gonna be hit with the hardest thing. I've had, I lost my stepbrother earlier this year, my father earlier this year, I lost my mother 20 years ago. I've experienced grief, and I thought I knew grief, but this is on a different level completely.
It is so repping. It is a totally, I would agree. This is not the first loss, but it is the most traumatic loss.
Absolutely, because it changes everything. But we find a way. I think if you have the right attitude, you can find a way. But yeah, it breaks my heart. But it breaks my heart to go back and talk to that 5-year-old Sammie and know what she has. Nobody wants that for your life, do they? And funnily enough, of all the things that I've talked about, that's the thing that upsets me. Go back and speaking to that little girl. I think I've talked about so much about losing Graham that I've not desensitized, but I'm comfortable talking about it.
Right.
Not that I'm any less upset than I was talking about 5-year-old Sammie.
I know you said something about inside always being sad, and on the outside being different. And that loss of our spouse will be with us forever. And so that constantly resonates with inside of us as we try to live outside of that sadness. And that is a good way to me explaining what moving forward looks like. I haven't forgotten them. I'm no more excited about this than the day it happened, but I'm living in, as you said, finding purpose, using those coping tools to help me learn how to find a life I will enjoy. This has been a really good conversation. I appreciate your time so much. Is there anything else you feel like you wanted to share or talk about, or recommendations that we didn't go over?
No, I just think talking about it to other people, connect with other widows. People think they understand, but it's only truly other widows who really get what we're feeling and have a true understanding. So, I always recommend that you find other widows that you can share your journey with, but also surround yourself with positive people. We are the result of the people that we spend the most time with, I think, and you can still be positive and have lost a spouse, I feel. So yeah, surround yourself with positive people, but yeah, do connect with other widows, because we get it. We're a special group of people, aren't we? I think we have more compassion, more understanding, And I think the widow community is an extraordinary community.
I would agree.
Not one that any of us want to be in
At
but
all.
the fact that we are in it, I'm grateful to have those connections with people. So
I am grateful for you and other widow and widowers that are on social media candidly sharing their journey, because you are educating people that may have not lost a widow, but they're a friend of someone, and trying to understand from a perspective they may not have the boldness to ask their friend how they're feeling, but they can listen to some information that you've shared and show how to format that to help somebody else, or someone that feels like they're alone, that no one could be going through something like this and still smile. And how could you be 2.5 years later on an ice cream truck and finding joy in that and still reminiscing about this wonderful man?
Yeah, I cry every time on the way back from an event. I cry every time. I named my van after him actually as well. So I couldn't call it Graham because I thought that was a really silly name for an ice cream van. And so I called it her, she is a her, Gigi, because G for gorgeous Graham. So
Oh,
it really is my tribute, I suppose, to him.
okay.
I always find, particularly if it's, I've had a long day. So I was out yesterday from 10 o'clock in the morning until about 8 o'clock at night, and I come back and the sun's setting and it's getting dark, and I look into the sky and just think, I'm so grateful that I've had this. And I always have a little cry because I feel like it's probably not the best thing to do when you're driving, in fairness. But I feel it, I'm grateful. It's not what I thought I was going to be doing, but I'm grateful I've got it, and that I can have that, hopefully, as not his legacy as such, but a really positive thing that I've done in my life afterwards. So yeah, I'll send you a link to my van as well, because I do put a bit of it on TikTok.
Okay.
It's just a piece of joy. So,
And that is important. The resilience. I love how you explained that you can have this wonderful day doing this, and then grief will kind of pop in there. We have to deal with that. And you lean into it and let it wash over you. And then you try to continue living your life. And those washing were just heavier in the first year. And then they just change in the second and in the third as we go through this. And thank you for that message to people to know that they're not alone and to just hang in there. Thank you so much, Sammie.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here for this conversation with Miss Sammie Hawkins. And I am sorry for the person that you have lost, that is no longer here in this world, that has driven you to this conversation. But rest assured, you are not alone, that the widowhood is here with you. I invite you to check out our website, the weekly podcast, and also join our Facebook group where we socialize. We have a book club and we meet once a month and also have a virtual get together. This journey is difficult, but it is possible for you to endure and to find a life that you enjoy. Have a good day.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.